we've reached the final game of the cage challenge, or the cage division, or the cage group, or whatever it is. I still don't know what to call it, but we'll go with the cage group. How about that? This has been a short challenge or group or whatever, simply because I chose the Knicks originally, and you can't play against your own team apparently, even though I'm not using any of the Knicks right now. That being said, the Philly game was fairly tough, and so was the Wizards game, but that was primarily because of the team that I ran with. Boston, I anticipated to give me some problems. You've got a pretty well-balanced squad. They might be a little bit weak inside, but they can all step outside, they can all create their own shot, and they can all sort of create some problems for me. Paul Pierce, I was expecting to give me some headaches. I went with so to start off, obviously they had Pierce, Antoine Walker, and Kenny Anderson. Kenny Anderson wasn't a bad player, and this is, I was talking about how I was using the Knicks. The Knicks were clearly descending at that point. 2001 was their last playoff appearance for a long, long time, and it wasn't up until when was it? 2012 with Carmelo that they won the first playoff series since 2000. So that was quite a long time. And it was the year before that against Miami when they were down 3-0. They was their first playoff win since 2001 against the Raptors, which they lost that series anyway. So, and Boston, on the other hand, were actually ascending at this point with this trio that I was talking about, primarily Pierce and Walker, but Kenny Anderson was a big part of it. And although they didn't make the playoffs in 2001, the very next year they would go up against Iverson, who's in this game, in the first round, and defeat them in 5 games, and that was back in the playoffs. In the first round were a best of 5, so that was a decisive game. So that was a big pressure moment for them that they came through in the clutch for. So that's why I went with Iverson in this. Also, he matches up well with Kenny Anderson, and I went with Jordan because he's got quite a storied history of rivalry in his Wizard days with Paul Pierce, and also in his latter days in Chicago with Antoine Walker. And obviously Antoine Walker is from Chicago and Jordan was playing for the Bulls, so there was a bit of history there. T-Mac, not so much of a history. I guess probably the only link you could throw in there was he was coached by Doc Rivers, and the last Boston championship in 2008 was Doc Rivers. So there you go, there's the link. But I've got to apologize to you guys for the cold. I know I sound terrible. It sounds like I'm holding my nose or my nostril when I'm recording this. It doesn't feel, trust me, as bad as it sounds, it's probably better than what it feels. There's Jordan with a nice 3, and I'm close to a game breaker, by the way, up 9-5. Pierce and Jordan, this should be fun. There's just right on cue, nice head fake, fakes out Jordan, and then hits another long 3, so they're going back and forth. Let's see what Jordan does in response. He gets him back with another fake out, and then hits a nice little fadeaway in the lane. I think Kenny Anderson tried to come over and help. Not sure exactly what he anticipated on doing there, but that's all well and good. Close to a game breaker, and I've got a 3-point lead, so the game is relatively in control at this point. Antoine Walker hitting a tough baseline jumper with 2 guys on him. So that's the reasoning behind the teams. There's a game breaker by me. I've got Kenny Anderson on me. He's not going to block that, so I'm going to shoot it exactly where I want it, and it's in my all too familiar spot for game breakers, that 3-point area, just on the elbow, or free throw line extended, really. And it's a 12-6 game. They're not too far off their own game breaker, though, so can't really take the foot off the accelerator just yet, but I'm feeling very comfortable at this stage. But yeah, so it's interesting when we look at this era for the Celtics. Pierce is the only one that really gets a whole lot of credit. Antoine Walker was a big critical factor for all this. He and Iverson were in the same draft, actually, obviously. And at that time, that 96 draft, the depth of the draft is really what made it special. And Antoine Walker was a legitimate all-star for 2 years. Actually, for 3 years. He was an all-star replacement in, when was it? 98. Yeah, so it was 98 when he came in as an all-star replacement. So he carried that Celtics squad for quite a period of time. They've got a game breaker now, so I'm just trying to dribbling it out. But yeah, so Antoine Walker, people laugh at him, especially his shot selection. He didn't really want to play inside. There's T-Mac grabbing another big board, and that was critical at that stage because it was a 14-10 lead. And had they gotten that game breaker, they could have essentially tied the game. But getting back to Antoine Walker, people made fun of the shimmy and the shot selection and the lack of defense and this, that, and the other. This man, he is one of the very few players in basketball history to have a college championship and an NBA championship. Remember, he won in 2006 as a member of the Miami Heat. So he doesn't get his credit. He should be a Hall of Famer when his time is up, just based off those credentials alone. Remember, the Basketball Hall of Fame is not just for the NBA. If it was just for the NBA, then I'd absolutely argue him being in there. But considering it's combined, then sure, why not have him for inducted? That's a pretty solid resume. Speaking of solid, that was one hell of a block shot by Paul Pierce. On his way down, he blocked it with two hands and ended up flat on his back whilst holding the basketball. And despite the fact that I've diffused that game breaker, they've come roaring back in this, and a steal right there by I think it was Pierce, and it's 14-13. So they're now at 16-13, but they brought it right back. So they essentially negated my diffusing of their game breaker. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it, for a basketball game? But there's a sweet block by T-Mac as Antoine Walker tried a windmill. But they're starting to attack the ball a lot more. And as you see, right on cue, Jordan goes for a head fake and Pierce is able to swat it away. I knew when that move just happened then when Antoine Walker crossed up Iverson that he was going to shoot the three, so I came over and helped. Jordan with a big board in traffic, and then T-Mac with a sweet dunk on the top of Antoine Walker. It's now 17-13, no chance for really a game breaker for either squad. So I'll be very happy if they don't shoot any threes and just go in for dunks. And just as I say that, there's Paul Pierce stepping back for a clutch three. But if I'm able to just run it in for dunks, not allow them to hit too many threes, how about that? I'll come out of this with a victory. Kenny Anderson just breaking down and all kinds of defenders right there and lobbing it up to Antoine Walker. That was a sweet hookup. So they're not too... If they get another couple of those hookups, they'll be right in a situation where they could have a game breaker. They could steal this. It's 19-16 now after that Jordan dunk. Kenny Anderson coming right back with a tough runner off the glass against two defenders. Lobbing it up to T-Mac there, and T-Mac, for whatever reason, it goes right from his hands. I guess they're human, I suppose. But what that does is now it's 19-18. Jordan goes in for a dunk, but it's 20-18. It's still a one-possession game sort of thing. If they're able to hit a three here, then we're in a sudden death situation. It's 20-19. I should be able to finish this. I'm not going to muck around. Iverson, T-Mac finishes it off with a busted rim, and now I'll move on to a boss challenge.